welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down this 10-game MLB DFS slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Before we get into it, if you do enjoy the content at any point in this video, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. We're right on the brink of 700 subscribers, so thank you to everyone that has watched and supported so far. Whether it be leaving a comment, leaving a like, tweeting at me, all the above, thank you everyone, and make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video for my home run call of the day. Last time out, we picked Judge against Tariq Skubal, and he hit a grand slam and another home run, so hopefully you played him. Hopefully you had a good night, and we will look to keep it rolling in this one. If you are getting really serious about MLB DFS, I do offer premium content. That's linked below in the description to get a lot more one-on-one access to ask me questions, a lot more data sheets, and the same tools that I use when building my own MLB DFS lineups. We've had a pretty good start to the season personally. And I want to continue to help you guys out. So I got free content on the channel, some premium content link below. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. As always, we like to go ahead and sort my sheet by K rate. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts, and the top guy in the K rate category today for today's slate is going to be Mr. Tyler Glasnow, taking on the Los Angeles Angels. He comes with a 36.5% K rate overall, 13.9 swing strike rate, 36% K rate against righties, and then a 37.1% K rate to lefties. So really good across the board. He added another pitch this year. Has been much more of a dynamic pitcher, has looked really good. The only issue is he has to take on a Los Angeles Angels team that really doesn't strike out all that much, and they're probably going to give him some really tough battles all night long. So not quite as good of a matchup as we've been seeing for Glasnow his last few outings. He comes in at 10-8 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they have him priced at 10-3. And while he has been very good, he's been taking on teams like Oakland, Toronto, the New York Yankees, the Texas Rangers, teams that all strike out a lot. And like I said, this particular matchup, not quite the same dynamic as far as his opponent. Is he still the top pitcher on the slate? Yes. Is he worth paying up for, though? That's a whole different question when we're breaking down these lineups and everything that you'll have to determine for yourself as we go along here. Second on the slate, we got Shohei Ohtani taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Comes in with a 33.3% K rate overall. Ground ball and fly ball stuff has been very good. A 41% K rate to righties, and then a 25.6% K rate to lefties. We're finally getting a little bit more of a sample size from Shohei. 15 innings pitched, being that he didn't really pitch the last 2 years. So the strikeout stuff's definitely back. He's having a little bit of an issue with the walk rate. A big issue with the walk rate. Like 25% of the time he's walking people. So hopefully that's just a temporary thing that he's trying to shake off the rust a little bit. But taking on a Tampa Bay Rays team that traditionally is really good, but they do have their fair share of strikeouts in their lineup. And Ohtani comes in as a small underdog. He's 8-9 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they got him priced at 7-6. The only thing to take note of is that he was hit on the elbow by a pitch on Sunday's game, and there's a possibility that he doesn't quite pitch, and they have to replace him with someone else due to an injury. So that's a little bit questionable. We got a few of those on the slate today where the pitcher's somewhat questionable. So just keep an eye on that news. If he's in, though, I definitely think he's a valid option. Second highest K rate on the slate. He's taking on this Ray teams. It's not the easiest, but they do have their fair share of strikeouts. Just know what you're dealing with the walk rate and stuff. He's still dealing with some walk issues, but definitely has the upside. Next on the slate, you could argue is the best option if the weather holds up for us. Walker Buehler taking on the Chicago Cubs, a team that has been striking out a bunch to start the season. A 28.6% K rate overall, a 12.1 swinging strike rate, 29% K rate to righties, and then a 28.3% K rate to lefties. And as mentioned, the matchup's really going to make me like him a lot more. I'm not going to say a lot more than those other guys, but there's a possibility. He's 10-2 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, he's priced at 9-6, so he's a slight discount off of Glasnow. And like I said, he gets a better matchup. It's in Chicago. Looks like there might be winds blowing out in Chicago, which is a little unfortunate because Wrigley Field is the most easily influenced field by wind. When it's windy in Wrigley, it's very significant. The way the stadium's built, the wind has a tendency to either really help pitchers or hurt pitchers. In this case, it looks like it might be hurting him. But there's a possibility this game doesn't even play. The forecast looks pretty ugly. If they're going to play, they probably are going to have to late start it. I'm not sure. Few games like that on the slate. I can't really tell you my lean until later on in the day, but as far as the weather's concerned, we might have an issue. If the weather's clear, going to like Walker Buehler in this one for sure. Next on the list, we got Kenta Maeda priced at a very deep discount, at least on FanDuel at first glance. He got a 27.3% K overall, 15.2 swing strike rate, a 33.3% K rate against righties, and then a 22.1% K rate against lefties. Does strike out right-handed batters a lot more, and unfortunately in this Texas matchup, he's going to have a lot of lefties, but they are lefties that strike out a bunch. And as mentioned on FanDuel, he's had a couple really tough outings last few times out, and they've got him priced way down. He's priced at 6'9". On FanDuel, as far as DraftKings is concerned, they've got him priced at 7'8". So still a decent price over on DraftKings. I think on FanDuel the price is just too cheap now. Giving up 5 and 7 earned runs the last 2 times out, I think that he'll be fine. He's just going to have to make some adjustments. He only threw 51 and 75 pitches those 2 games. He's on average, he's been getting up there in the high 80s as far as pitch count's concerned. I think this is a great bounce back spot for him. He comes in as a 181 favorite. The Twins are expected to put up quite a few runs in this one, give him some run support. I think he's in a good position to get the win. I think he's in a good position to get some more strikeouts. Like I said, the only thing that's a little unfortunate is we wish he would strike out those left-handed bats a little more, but when you're dealing with left-handed bats that strike out like 30% of the time, as some of these guys do in the lineup, you know, we can kind of bypass that and still have some interest in Maeda, so definitely like him. Vince Velasquez taking on the Milwaukee Brewers, another team that strikes out a bunch, of 26.6% K overall, a 27.2% K rate against righties, and then a 25.7% K rate against lefties. Does really struggle in the hard contact category, but as mentioned, the Brewers, if this game is good weather-wise, he's only 6K on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they've got him priced at 7K, so I do think that he's a pretty good tournament option in the mid-range. Definitely a little bit of a risk that you're taking, but the strikeout upside is going to be there for you, and I think he's a reasonable play. Next, we got Dean Kremer for the Baltimore Orioles. Comes in with a 25.8% K rate overall, a 25.3% K rate against righties, and then a 26.5% K rate against lefties. Has some issue with the hard contact, but he's taking on a team in the Seattle Mariners who do offer plenty of strikeouts. And I think he's a guy that a lot of people aren't going to want to click his name. And you could get him at lower ownership than you would typically think in a spot like this, taking on a Seattle Mariners team who, as mentioned, is one that we like to target. So Kremer priced at 5.8 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they got him priced at 6.1. So I do think he's an interesting cheap option. A guy that's been struggling a little bit, but he's been taking on some pretty tough opponents. Looking at his game logs, as far as who he's taken on recently, you can see he took the Yankees on last time out. Gave up 6 earned runs. Texas the time before, pretty good matchup, and he only gave up 1 earned run. That was a good performance against Seattle the time before. He did give up 4 earned runs, and then against the Yankees before he gave up 3 earned runs. Seattle was able to get to him one time, but as mentioned, the K rate's there. And the matchup, I do think that he could have a good outing here. So no issues with that. And then as we continue to go along here, things start to get a little bit less interesting. You got Kendall Graveman taking on the Baltimore Orioles in that same game. Also a team that strikes out quite a bit, and he has a decent strikeout rate as well. So both of those guys in those games are good flyer tournament options. And Graveman's a lot better in the hard contact than Dean Kremer is. So you can make an argument that he's an even better play. The strikeout rate's not quite as good, but the ground ball rate and all that stuff's been really good over 30 innings pitch sample size. No issues with that. I'm sure a lot of people are going to go to Aaron Savali taking on the Kansas City Royals. I do think that he has some pretty decent strikeout upside. It's just a matter of whether he's really comparative to the other options on the slate. And I do think that he's a decent play, but there's other guys with some higher upside priced either more appropriately or mispriced. So I think that he might be someone I'm not all too excited to be playing today. I'm sure he'll get the job done. I'm sure he'll be on the list as far as options. Just not sure he's going to be my highest priority. And with that being said, let's go ahead and transition over to bats, figure out some bats that we're going to want to play today. The one guy I want to mention before we wrap things up pitching-wise would be Frankie Montas taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. And Frankie Montas is a guy that's really good in the ground ball and the fly ball, has a decent K rate as well. Can get a little crazy at times, but he is taking on a Toronto squad that's really loaded up and down, but has some strikeouts in it, and I don't think he's going to get any ownership, and I think he's definitely got some strikeout upside. And then when you factor in the Vegas lines, he comes in as a 126 favorite. His team has a 4.42 implied run total as opposed to the Blue Jays, only at a 4.08, and he's pitching in Oakland at home, which is a pretty good pitching environment. There's plenty of room in the outfield for those fly balls to fall dead instead of going out of the ballpark. In the Oakland Coliseum, we always like to see that. And as you can see on the screen now, the little chart that I like to show you guys as far as the visual is concerned, hitters in the Coliseum don't exactly have the easiest time. So I think that Frankie Montas is an interesting tournament option you can get low owned. Let's go ahead and start looking at some bats that we're going to want to target. Worst on the slate and Sierra scale on active ERA is Shohei Ohtani, but we had already mentioned. I think that's temporary. I think those numbers are going to even out. Not too worried about that. Top stack on the slate's got to be Colorado. In Colorado, Coors Field, great hitting environment, taking on Aaron Sanchez, who doesn't strike anyone out. Is really bad in the slugging against both righties and lefties, and I definitely think that he's going to be an easy target today for these Colorado Rockies. Looking at their implied run total, they come in with a 5 implied run total. The only issue is it is only about 43 degrees, and there's 9-mile-an-hour winds blowing in Colorado. It's still a great hitting environment, but we're still waiting for it to warm up there as opposed to other places that we might be talking about on the slate. In the low 40s. It's a little unfortunate as far as hitting weather is concerned. But Aaron Sanchez doesn't strike anyone out. The ball should be put in play a bunch. So we're looking to play Tapias, Trevor Story, Ryan McMahon, CJ Cron, Charlie Blackmon. Everyone up and down this order. Dom Nunez in the 8th spot as the catcher has a lot of pop. At the bottom of the order, he's a guy that will be low owned, and he can hit the baseball pretty well. So definitely have some interest in the Colorado stack today. Favorite options would have to be Trevor Story, Ryan McMahon, and CJ Cron in the middle of the order, of course. But that's a little bit of an obvious take. But those 3 guys specifically, you're going to really want to be locking in on in the stacks, unless you're really looking to change things up and be contrarian in your lineup build. Tyler Anderson taking on the San Diego Padres comes in with an 18.9% K rate overall. So 18.6% K rate against righties, and then a 19.8% K rate against lefties. And he's actually been really good on the season, but if you're looking at his numbers the last few years, they're less than impressive, and he's taking on a San Diego Padres team that really hits lefties well. And I tend to lean on, banking on the San Diego Padres in this spot. Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Will Myers, Jurickson Profar, all guys that hit lefties well, and then the lefties aren't going to go down easy either. Trent Grisham, Eric Hosmer, Jake Cronenworth. Of course, we do prefer to play those right-handed bats as opposed to the lefties, but Tyler Anderson still does give up a 500 slugging to left-handed bats. So I think that the Padres stack is definitely an interesting one today. The next you got Miguel Diaz. He's only pitched 6 innings. He's taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I'm going to lean pretty heavily on some Vegas data for this one because there's a possibility also that Dinelson Lamet gets a start in this one. He's returning from the IL, and there's no confirmation on whether he'll be starting or not. So unfortunately, we don't know that. We're waiting on those lines to come out, but might have some interest in the San Diego Padres pitcher taking on the Pirates. If it's Lamet, he's going to be somewhat limited in his pitch count, so I won't really be interested there. But maybe if it's Diaz or someone else, and we can dig into the numbers further. My patrons that are looking at my power rankings, my cheat sheet, keep an eye out for that one because we might be having some interest in a Pittsburgh pitcher today. Adam Wainwright taking on the New York Mets comes in with a really low K rate. Does a pretty good job giving the ball on the ground. However, he does have an issue against left-handed bats. Gives up a 457 slugging with a lot of hard contact. So I do think that, and even the righties at 392 slugging, hard contact, ground ball, fly ball stuff's decent, but not the greatest. Taking on a New York Mets lineup that up and down has a lot of skill. I do think they're going to be an interesting stack today. Looks like we may have some weather concerns again in this one, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. But if this game is good to go, really going to like the lefties in Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, Michael Conforto, Dom Smith. All those guys can hit, and they're in a great situation taking on Wainwright. And then, of course, I have no issues with you throwing in the righties to round out your stack. Of course, Pete Alonso in the 4-hole has a ton of power. J.D. Davis in the 6th spot has a ton of power. And then you got James McCann, who also has a ton of power for a catcher. So I think that the Mets stack's going to be a good situation tonight, especially those left-handed bats. Dean Kremer taking on the Seattle Mariners. We had talked about his issues. He gives up a 519 slugging to righties, a 466 slugging to lefties. So while you can't pitch him, sure, you can play some Seattle bats as well. Looking to play guys like Mitch Haniger, Ty France, Kyle Seager. A 3-2 is a really interesting option in the 3 spot. Jose Marmolos has a ton of power. So Taylor Trammell as well has some power and some speed. And Kyle Lewis in the 4 spot. That's also a ton of talent. So a situation where you can be playing the pitcher, you can also be playing the bats. Joey Lucchesi taking on the St. Louis Cardinals, a guy that's a left-handed thrower that's really good against left-handed bats, but not so good against righties. A 426 slugging, even up 38.8% hard contact. And the St. Louis Cardinals do have a few guys that really perform well against lefties, most notably Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado in the 3 and 4 spot. Definitely like those guys taking on the lefty today. They rake off left-handed pitching, and then you can fill out your stacks with the other guys in the order, like Paul DeJong, Tyler O'Neill, Andrew Kitzner. Harrison Bader does well against lefties. And Tommy Edman and Dylan Carlson have been swinging the bat pretty good all year long. So, like those guys. Steven Matz taking on Oakland, a team that does really well off left-handed pitching, and a guy that gives up a 484 slugging with a 35.9% hard contact rate to right-handed hitting. I do think that the Oakland Athletic stack is going to be an interesting one today for sure. Mark Canha, Ramon Laureano, Sean Murphy, Matt Chapman, Jed Lowry, Stephen Piscotty, Ellis Andrews. Like all those guys are known throughout their career for hitting lefties very well. Even the switch hitter and Jed Lowry has been hitting lefties really well. Matt Olson and Mitch Moreland, of course, are the two that you're going to have the least amount of interest. Excuse me. Those two guys are going to be the ones that you're going to have the least amount of interest in because they're left-handed bats, but you're going to get them lower owned. And while Steven Matz doesn't have the worst numbers against lefties, he does still give up a 454 slugging. So, going to definitely like the right-handed bats for the Oakland Athletics, as mentioned. Not the best hitting environment in the Oakland Coliseum, as we talked about, but you're really banking on these guys hitting the ball 400 feet and hitting a home run. You know, that's the concept here, where that's hard slugging given up. And then after that, we talked about maybe fading on Aaron Zavala. You could play the right-handed bats for Kansas City against him. Kyle Hendricks, taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers, has been a guy that's really been declining. Traditionally, does a really good job of limiting the hard contact, but doesn't strike anyone out. And it's becoming a problem later on in his career. He gets to a 427 slugging to righties, a 404 slugging to lefties. And like I said, the problem is he just does not miss bats at all. And taking on a Los Angeles Dodgers team that can hit the ball with hitters all up and down the lineup, that's going to be an issue for him. In Wrigley Field, wind blowing out, if the weather does hold up in this game plays, definitely going to have some interest in these Dodgers bats. They're on the road. They're going to get the guaranteed 9th inning at-bats. They're in a situation against a pitcher that doesn't really scare me, and the Cubbies bullpen doesn't scare me either. So Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Will Smith, I mean, the whole entire lineup. Of course, we're really going to like the guys at the top, and Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, but we don't mind the guys at the bottom either. They can all hit, and you're going to get them at much more lower ownership than you are the guys at the top of the order. So, definitely have some interest in the Dodgers bats today. And moving further along, Vince Velasquez. We talked about maybe playing him against the Milwaukee Brewers, but the Brewers also are in a good situation here with the amount of hard contact that Velasquez gives up, specifically against right-handed hitting. You can see really bad across the board. The ground ball, the fly ball, the slugging, a lot of hard contact given up against lefties. It's also not the greatest with a 469 slugging given up. And you could definitely target Vince Velasquez with bats. And we were looking at the Milwaukee Brewers lineup up and down. They do have some power. While there's a lot of strikeouts, guys like Daniel Vogelbach, Christian Yelich was expected to maybe return in this one. That's going to make me like the stack a lot more, too, if he's back in the lineup. Avisail Garcia, Travis Shaw, Jackie Bradley, up and down. I do think that they're in an interesting spot here. And while I said Vince Velasquez is a pitching option, you can definitely stack up the Brewers as well. There's multiple situations on the slate. We talked about the Seattle-Baltimore game where maybe the pitchers could be a little bit interesting, but we could also target those pitchers. Not the greatest lineups, but not the greatest pitching. And not the greatest pitching, but not the greatest lineup. So it can go both ways. I do think the Milwaukee Brewers stack is an interesting one today. And then once we get past them, I mean, there's not anything too crazy to be pointing out on my sheet. The one thing that I would mention is Adrian Hauser's issues against left-handed hitting. Does give up quite a bit of hard contact to lefties in this same game that we just talked about with Velasquez, a 503 slugging, 34.6% hard hit rate, and a 376 WOBA. Not the greatest numbers, and when you're taking on a guy in Bryce Harper, that could be an issue in the 3 spot, specifically Bryce Harper, Didi Gregorius, those lefties that really rake in the middle of the order. I do think that there are some intriguing plays today, and I think Bryce Harper could really stand out, as being a good play. And lastly, the Minnesota Twins have one of the highest implied run totals. We didn't talk about the Giants either. The Giants are in Coors Field taking on German Marquez. German Marquez is not the greatest matchup as far as, he's pretty respectable ground ball, fly ball rate, strikeout rate, and all that stuff. Does give up some slugging to left-handed hitting, however, and the Giants do have quite a few lefties in their lineups. Their lineup, guys like Alex Dickerson, they just acquired Mike Tauchman off the Yankees, a good hitter, finally getting an opportunity with them. Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, and then the righties, Evan Longoria, Buster Posey, Wilmer Flores can also all hit really well. So, in Coors Field, great hitting environment. German Marquez isn't the greatest matchup, but, the hitting environment sometimes outweighs that. And to give you guys a visual as to how Coors Field plays, I'll pull it up for you guys. A lot of green over the entire course of the field. Triples, doubles, singles, home runs, doesn't matter. Great hitting environment. So, that's why we talk about Coors Field like it's a glorified hitting environment, because it is. It's that good. And yeah, lastly, Dane Dunning taking on the Minnesota Twins. They got the highest implied run total. This guy's numbers really don't look that bad, but he's been really struggling so far in the season. Gives up a 356 slugging to lefties specifically, only a 299 slugging to righties. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff, all that stuff has been really good traditionally, but he's been really struggling this season, and he's trying to find it. And looking at his game logs, you can see 4 earned runs and 5 earned runs the last 2 times out. Before that, was pitching pretty well, 0-0, 1 earned runs. So maybe a good bounce back spot for him. I don't know. Vegas expects him to kind of struggle again in this one. And who we're going to be looking to play in this one, of course, the guys in the middle of the order with the power. There are 16-mile-an-hour winds blowing out in Minnesota, so that's going to help the hitting. And we have guys like Josh Donaldson, Byron Buxton, Nelson Cruz, Alex Kirilloff, Jorge Polanco, Max Kepler, Mitch Garver. It's a very good lineup. So the run total makes sense. And I'm not going to be the one to talk you off stacking these guys up. I definitely think that they're viable in tournaments, and they might be somewhat popular because of the run total, but for good reason. We're not scared of the Texas bullpen. The Texas bullpen's really bad, and this lineup's been hitting really well. Byron Buxton having a breakout season. You got Josh Donaldson, Nelson Cruz, the young hitter, and Kirilloff is really hitting the ball well as well. And the bottom order, Max Kepler and Jorge Polanco are guys that have been hitting the ball well for years in the league and established names. So, with all of that being said, before I let you guys go, I got to give you my home run call of the day. Let's get into it. And my home run call of the day today is going to be Bryce Harper taking on Adrian Houser. I mentioned his issues against left-handed hitting. He gives up a .503 slugging, 34.6% hard hit rate, a .376 blowup to those left-handed bats. Really been struggling against lefties, and when you're looking at how Bryce Harper performs against his repertoire, on average, Adrian Houser will throw about a 94 to 95 mile-an-hour fastball. Bryce Harper features a 258 ISO with a 420 wOBA against that pitch. And as far as Houser's secondary pitches, first he'll go to the sinker, then the changeup, then the curveball. Looking at how Bryce does against those pitches, against the sinker, he has a 343 ISO with a 435 wOBA. Really crushes that pitch as well. Does great against the changeup, featuring a 238 ISO with a 371 wOBA. And his biggest weakness will be that curveball, but it's only thrown about 15% of the time by Adrian Houser. Bryce Harper only features about a 119 ISO against that pitch, but the fastball, 35% of the time thrown to lefties, is where it's really going to be an issue for him, taking on Bryce with that 95 mile-an-hour fastball at 258 ISO and a 420 wOBA. Love this spot for Bryce Harper, and he is my home run call of the day. So there you have it, guys. Bryce Harper, get him in your lineups. Love this spot for him, and that is all from me in this one. If you did enjoy the content, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. And then don't forget to check out my premium content link below in the description. I wish you guys all the best of luck tonight, and we will see you in the next one.